That's a Thursday, March 21st.
So, okay, did they find it?
I had to do it, like, when were they talking about doing it?
Well, when you said March 21st, I was like, I got to reach out to you about your schedule availability. But if you have some availability, you want to just
It's a 10 to 11 meeting, 4:30 to 5, but then we've got the audit committee meeting scheduled for that. I can't. Okay. After that, around the lunch hours when it's gonna have to be, around 11 to 12, somewhere, 11 to 12, but I'll be just getting out of conference.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody has had a good week so far. I'm also hoping that we'll have a good evening tonight, and we can keep it short and sweet. Going to call this meeting to order. Today is March the 5th, 2019. We always begin, as usual, with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to take the youngest person. Everybody's looking around now because you know what I'm going to say. Carlos, right. you might qualify, man. Huh? Come on. Oh, yeah, it could be a couple folks up here. But Carlos, no. Carlos, come on. Carlos. Go ahead.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, you know, I could do just the reverse. I could say the oldest person, but then y'all be mad at me, so I'm not going to do that. You know, somebody was saying to me, I was talking to a good friend that I haven't spoken to in a while, and she, you know Laura Lee Smith? You remember Laura Lee Smith? Yeah. Anyways, I hadn't seen her in a while, and she was saying, somehow she ended up saying, "How old are you, Van?" And I said, "Well, I'm 56. She said, "Damn, you're 4 years short of 60. I was like, "Oh my gosh."
Now, for those who are 4 years over 60.
I know, it's all relative. So, whatever. Stay young at heart, I guess, is the best advice we could give each other. All right, so we also try to take some time at the beginning of board meetings to have a moment of reverence or silence. And what comes to my mind is the folks in, I think it's Lee County, Beauregard, Alabama, I think it is, tornado. I think 23 people lost their lives. And then, you know, you multiply that by the number of loved ones and family and friends that are left without important people in their lives and significant property in their lives. So let's just take a moment to think about, in a very prayerful and thoughtful way, about those folks that have struggles that far exceed what we deem to be our challenges that we face. Thanks for taking the moment to do that. Next item on our agenda is speakers addressing an agenda item, and today we have no speakers. Next item on our agenda is review of student health and athletic programming.
Celia or Carlos is going to start right in? Okay, go ahead. No?
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan. But before you begin, Carlos, we're in a transition back to Dr. Lee, and you may notice, because this is my fault, I didn't have a chance to communicate with Dr. Lee today. We always will put times, and what Francine had been doing more recently, it's pretty new, is she talks to the people who are charged with the responsibility of leading that part of the discussion. So in this part of the agenda, you would talk to Dan and figure out how much time they needed. As you will see, Dr. Lee, when you get back into the role of things, I surrender the gavel, so to speak, to my colleagues that may have certain topics that they cover. And when they have certain topics and their name is on the agenda, then you confer with them and say, well, how much time is it you're going to need? And we're going to put that on the agenda to make sure we stick with those time limits. So thank you very much. And welcome back, by the way. All right. Carlos?
So good evening. Before I get started, I would like to thank the superintendent, the Board of Education, deputies, chiefs, for giving me this opportunity to share a little information about overall health, PE, and athletics. What I'll do is I'll share things in the area of elementary, going to middle school, and then high school, and then also speak of our interscholastic programs as I engage in the conversation, or the presentation. Physical education, through commissioner regulations, is required to be delivered grades K through 6 at the elementary level at a minimum of 120 minutes. And as a district, we provide that service with certified staff every other day at 40 minutes. And then we also work with our building leaders, that being teachers and others within the building, to support that informal delivery of physical education. Could be morning announcements where we're doing a warm-up to start the day, a cool-down to end the day, brain breaks, action-based learning, math and movement. These are some of the things that we've been providing to the district as a whole within our schools. The health education is also required by commissioner regulations to be delivered grades K through 6 by the classroom teacher. And what we're doing there is we have trainers within the district. We did the train-the-trainer model that are supporting classroom teachers as well as champions within our schools to support the overall delivery of health education across the district as a whole. Playworks is also something, as we look at our wellness policy. Recess is another component of 20 minutes, and we've contracted with Playworks, who's providing that service in supporting our schools and in providing them innovative ways to deliver and to work with our teachers as well as any staff within the building in delivering 20 minutes of recess daily. At the middle school, we provide physical education every other day, and we provide health at a half a credit course. That's either delivered every day for a semester or every other day for the course of a school year, and currently we deliver that in 7th grade. Our interscholastic sports program, at the modified level, we have about 19 different offerings. Those offerings range from both male, female, and co-ed programs. And right now we have a little over 500 students participating within our athletic program across the district as a whole. At the high school, we also provide physical education every other day with certified staff, both middle and high, throughout the course of the year, and a half credit of health. That half credit, again, is either every day for the course of one semester or every other day for the course of the school year with certified health teachers. Our interscholastic program at the 9 through 12, we offer 34 different programs. Again, male, female, and co-ed, JV, and varsity. And with that, currently, because I say currently only because we still have the rest of, we're closing up with the winter season and then starting the spring, we have over 1,974 students participating in our athletic program. Of those 1,974, 1,160 are boys, and 814 of them are girls. That's including our modified program as well. As we continue, wanted to share that our athletic program as a whole provides an opportunity for every student in the district, grades 7 through 12. Regardless of what school they go to, we find ways to connect them to the opportunities across the district. We work closely with transportation and the buildings to provide that level of support, but every child in our district has the opportunity to take advantage of these sports across the district. But what we've been doing, throughout the last couple of years is revitalizing some programs. Our girls swim program has not been in place for the last 3 or 4 years, so we're bringing swimming back to the district. The young ladies have been participating in our boys program because we weren't offering it, so they had the opportunity to participate in the winter, but girls swimming is a sport that's provided in the fall. Just giving a little breakdown in reference to the cost of bringing it back. We pay our coaches a stipend of $3,000. We also have a lifeguard for practices and games. And then in order, the meets that take place, there's officials that come to officiate those meets, so a little over $1,100 for the officials. And then supervision to support, the transitions that take place while the meet is taking place from the bleachers or the area where the spectators are to the entryway. So just to kind of give you an idea of, what it takes to kind of bring a program back. We've been revitalizing and consolidating some of our programs. Lacrosse was a great example from last year, where we have one lacrosse varsity program in the city, and it supports all of our schools. The goal is that as we continue to build on that interest and the success of program, that we then start to move those programs right to those individual buildings. But right now, we're trying to bring life to those particular programs, and, lacrosse is just another example of what we're looking to do with our girls swimming. In order for young men and women to participate in sports, we have an eligibility requirement. Students must maintain a minimum of a 2.0 GPA, 90% attendance, and good citizenship. This.
What do you mean by good citizenship?
So that's monitored within the building. It's based on referrals, based on anything that's been taking place within the building.
Oh, you're talking about like good behavior for a student? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I work with immigration, so when people say citizenship, I just want to make sure that that was not.
I gotta be mindful of that. I'm sorry.
It's okay, thank you.
Sportsmanship. Now, I wanted to share just some success in reference to the impact that interscholastic sports has on the lives of our young men and women. This data is from 2015-16, but it's pretty consistent in these last couple of years. We are scrubbing that data as we speak, just to make sure that we're accurately providing that information. But in saying that, this information in this particular slide, when it comes to overall attendance, a young man or young lady that's not participating in sports is averaging about 75% attendance. A one-sport athlete, so that's a young lady, young man that's participating just in one sport, it increases to 90%. Two-sport, 92%, and three sports, 95%. So a 20% shift in overall attendance within the building based on the amount of interactions that they have with opportunities that are provided outside of the regular school day. And I think this data would speak to many other things. When we provide our young men and women with opportunities that keep them engaged, and the big thing with that is if we balance that, knowing that those opportunities that they have after school keep them engaged in the classroom, has a huge impact on the overall success and the opportunities that they have, not only for college, but just career opportunities. To also say just the character piece, leadership, sportsmanship, communication, collaboration, all those things that transition, to the roles that they'll play regardless of what jobs they have as they go on to be productive citizens. The achievement as well, so again, a young man or young lady not participating in any sport has an average of 1.6 overall GPA, one sport, 2.0, two sports 2.2, three sports 2.5. And again, a huge shift in creating that balance. As I share that success as a whole, we had the opportunity last board meeting to recognize two of our young ladies who were receiving Division I scholarships. We've had many young men and young women receive scholarships at Division I, Division II, and Division III levels, but we also had three young men in the fall that were recognized. Ricky Gamble at Wilson Commencement, who's has a Division II scholarship to Carson Newman, and Dion Edwards from Wilson, who's also going on a football scholarship to the University of Albany. Diasia Time in Edison, that's one young lady that we recognized, I think it was last week. She's heading off to Niagara University, and then Diasia Fair, heading to UB. And again, these young ladies and young men would not be afforded the opportunity to take advantage of these scholarships without hitting those books and having that balance of the academic and the overall athletic opportunities. That closes my piece as far as just a quick.
Any questions?
I have Just in general, I've heard, and I may not be saying this correctly, but when we have gone to play other schools, not within the district, because I don't know sports, so I'm going to try to put this together as best I can. But the governing bodies of those sports seem to not to have the level of respect for our students. And some issues I've heard is that those players, those coaches, and that governance body tends to disrespect our students. And I've sort of heard that it's sort of allowed, that they can just do whatever they want to do to our students. These governors, and again, I don't know the names of it. Sort of, I don't know. I'm using Pop Warner governor, but it's not Pop Warner. But whatever the governance structure is, that they seem to, the whites that are on there seem to disrespect our students who are playing in those games. There are times when the coaches don't call the right call. They disrespect their call, make calls, penalties on our students, but will allow white students to have a pass on those. And so they need to know that we're looking at that. And I've also heard there are times when historically that they've sort of had their own kind of governance structure for their own players, not wanting City School District or Rochester, I'll just make it a little broader, Rochester participants to play in those sports. They've sort of, there's been, what I understand, where they've actually crafted out. I know that that's happened somewhat in Pop Warner football, where Baden was, Baden was Baden, and they've never wanted to play Baden because Baden always wins. And so, but there's been, so they've, separated themselves from these sports governance structures. And so I say all of that because I don't want our students to be discriminated against in sports where we're talking about sportsmanship. And so I would like there to be strong advocacy around that. If our kids are going to be playing other kids that don't necessarily like them, at least they would be fair in it. And so, that has come to my attention over the past, and we need to have strong advocacy and protection for our children so that they can feel safe. If there are people who are just allowing it to go because of who they are, then that's an issue. That's a problem because our children are going to feel some kind of way and going to feel that they're not protected. And we've got to make sure our children are protected.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask a follow-up question. I know that you came to our ESA committee meeting last year, and we spoke about having a district-wide event to recognize our student athletes and their coaches. And I wanted to check in on that because you talk about how sports impacts attendance in a positive way, impacts behavior, all of those things combined. And so I wanted to get an update on where we were at with that.
Sure. So I know for the April board meeting, we'll be looking to recognize all of our fall and winter, not only athletes but coaches. And then going into June to close out, we do our scholar athlete. But when we speak of the bigger community meeting, community banquet, or we have a date, I can get that to you, it's in June, where we're looking to kind of collaborate with the city youth programs and our interscholastic programs to just kind of highlight, maybe something like a picnic, but just again, bringing the groups together to recognize the successes and really to put young men and young ladies that are either graduating from high school to be role models and kind of identify them in front of our youth programs that they see the future and how balancing that academic and athletic piece provides those opportunities. So I will send you the dates. There's 2 tentative dates because we're just trying to make sure there's some events that are going on in June on a Saturday. So right now, we're looking at a Saturday, and I don't have it with me, but I'll get it to you.
Yeah, and so I know we spoke about dates in the past too, and so you said that it might be a picnic or a banquet, which is cool either way. But is there anything that you all would need from us in regards to setting this up, us meeting the school board? Is there something that we need to do to make sure that this happens? Because I feel that it needs to happen this year. I mean, we have so many big successes going on in our sports department. And I just think that we should do a bigger job. You're already doing a good job. Do a bigger job of recognizing our students specifically so that the community can see all the things that they're doing.
Okay. I can let you know.
Okay.
Definitely let you know.
Oh, Van,
Yes.
I just have a quick
Commissioner
question.
LeBron?
I'm going to answer for Carlos. It's going to be money, Natalie. He's going to put a resolution together with the cause.
I'm asking now because, I mean, we're in budget season.
That's a good point. So, Carlos, you're going to have to get that resolution together quickly. Just a quick question on how you guys do the selection process for coaches. And if that's not something that you can answer right now, if it's something that can be emailed and put into the question log, because it might take too long or it's more complicated than just an answer right now. So the coaches selection process, and how do you select who you contract with for sports and different agencies? You can put it on the, I can put it on the question log and you can
provide you
answer.
those, because it
Yeah.
definitely has a lot of layers to it as a whole, but I can.
Yeah, can you document that question? Thank you. Thanks, Carlos.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Carlos. Appreciate it. Good job. Thank you, Dan, for arranging that. Next item on the agenda is discussion of the leadership profile. Anybody can lead that discussion or begin that discussion. I think Dr. Lee, I don't know why I don't have one. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. Yeah, Dr. Lee provided us with a copy of the leadership profile along with the edits. I would just note that there was a additional form, was not well attended. There was some logistical problems, I think, in terms of how that program was run. Long story short, I got a call indicating that the program was to go from 11 to 1. No one showed up, and so at 11:20, I am told, the search firm wrapped up and packed up and went home about 11:20, 11:30, right? After that, I am told, shortly after that, I am told that I think Commissioner Davis and some others showed up, and the search firm was gone. I did speak to Mr. Kastner about that, but when I found out, I did not attend. Actually, somebody sent a message through Facebook saying, hey, where were the board members? I heard that they shut down shop early. Why weren't board members there, and why did they shut down shop early? And I explained to this person on Facebook the purpose of those forms, as I had when I was at the last forum. I went to the first and only other forum we went, and I explained then when it came up that those forms were not for board members. It was to get information from the community about what they wanted in a superintendent, and they were to communicate that with the search firm. So board members were not supposed to be there, and I think she understood that. But there was a problem with the search firm having left early because people did show up. I should also tell you that that is a search firm, BWP, got an additional 200 survey responses, which is a good thing. It's much better. He also indicated, and Dr. Lee, you can confirm this if I missed anything, in an email, because I asked him whether our profile would change based on additional input that he received from the 200 additional survey responses and from the video that he observed from the Democrat and Chronicle, the student forum. And in his response to the email, he said no, that in principle, his profile that we've had since last week pretty much stayed the same. I don't know if you wanted to offer any additional comments about the forum since you were there, Commissioner Davis?
Yes, I did want to offer up. I think I did arrive like 20 minutes after, and I was surprised that they had already packed up. And when I was walking in, there was a parent who did come, and they had already packed up and left. So I did speak with that parent, and they did have some ideas they wished to share, that if the board could share more information about things that concern parents, such as the managed choice process that we have, some kinds of forums that the board could do in the community to explain the processes that the district uses would be helpful. And then some other individuals did come, but they thought that it would start at 11:30. And so 2 more individuals did come. I did offer to lead a workshop myself because I knew the 3 questions that they were asking and to hand in the sheet to the BWP, but they said that's okay. They had the link that they could write to, et cetera. And just to let persons know, that person said it wasn't well advertised, and I know that as a board we made a decision not to advertise it using the media because of cost. So I just wanted to let the public know that that decision was made.
I did want to add, and I should have added, that communications prior to this particular forum made sure that it was blasted on Twitter, Facebook. We did an email blast, and I think there was a robocall too. Is that right, Carlos?
Yeah. Also, my kid came home with the form too. So I did get the email, the robocall. My child brought home the form. My neighbors' children brought it home because we were talking about it. But I don't think that that's necessarily always like the best engagement piece, but that's another conversation for another time.
Yeah. And I know Vice President Elliott often reminds us about our communications plan. And maybe, and I think the first forum that you had talked about parent engagement, did it not? Mm-hmm. So obviously, we have to make sure that we figure out how to engage our parents, because if they're not responding to something as significant as selecting the next superintendent, there's a problem in terms of how we are communicating. And we have to take the responsibility of figuring out what it is, how it is we can communicate more effectively, important things like that. But in any event, it did not, in the end, affect their profile. So we have the profile. Any changes that you make are not going to, and changes that you offer are not going to be affected by any additional information that they got from the 200 surveys. By the way, a good number of them, BWP said, he said they came from students. I think as a result of some work that folks did here, and we thank you for that. Somebody here? School chiefs, thank you very much. I think Mr. Kastner described the bulk of the responses coming from students, and what he did say is that what he found interesting was that, remember that high number for what people liked about the district was teachers, right? Remember that? And we thought, reasonably so, that maybe that was a reflection of the fact that most of the survey respondents were teachers. But what he said was, when you added the student information, what the students were saying they liked most about the district was the teachers. So there you go. And Mr. Kastner will provide all the detail. I'm giving it to you secondhand, but I thought it was important I share that with you. Commissioner Hallmark?
Did you want comments about this profile rating?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the writing teacher and me. Mm-hmm. I just want to add, I would suggest we write out ELLs, SELs, and SPED, instead of the acronyms. And on that same sentence, disadvantaged students, put students at the end. And then I have it hits me wrong in the, let's see, what sentence? It's I guess it's the last sentence. The candidate must be strong and exhibit.
What page are you on?
I know, you're talking about a draft, though. This is Commissioner draft.
Oh, okay. So we're not,
No.
okay. I was working off of this.
LeBron, I can't hear what you're saying.
You were saying this is
This is
simply
the draft right here. This
Commissioner
is
Davis's,
just
it's not
different
the
input.
current.
Right. This is not the actual
Okay.
profile that we've decided on, which is what we're having the discussion now on.
Both Commissioner Hallmark and Commissioner LeBron were speaking at the same time, and I couldn't make out one word of either of them.
Okay, so I'll start over.
Thanks.
Forgive me, I thought this was our current copy of the profile, and I see that it is Commissioner Davis has suggested. And so I had some comments about the language, so maybe I should refrain from that, because I have some ideas about tightening and strengthening some of the sentences. I don't know if I should do that here or later.
Absolutely, we'd have to do it here.
Okay.
Yep.
Even though there's another version of this elsewhere that,
Well, it's not that there's another version. This is it, but it's got some edits on it.
okay.
Is that right? Okay, so we're working from a transition here, because y'all remember, Francine was leading this effort for us.
Yeah.
This is the red line version of the original.
That's my understanding. If there's a more recent version, I don't have it, but this is the most recent version I have. From what I understood the last time that the profile was discussed, there was a request of the commissioners to propose edits, and they did so in this document.
So what you see on the right, I know you all know how this program works, but you see WP is Willa Powell, I think JD is Judith Davis. So this is it with those edits. So you can comment off from this.
Okay. And so, fine. So you heard what I said about the former part of that. And then the last sentence, I would suggest two things. The candidate must be strong and exhibit ethical leadership above reproach, just sort of switching order of things. In the midst of a culture of fear, that hits me the wrong way. I would say challenging culture. This is a job advertisement. And that's it.
Okay, I'm sorry, Commissioner Hallmark, where are you reading from where you said?
I'm reading the last sentence in blue.
Of the second paragraph.
Second paragraph.
There somewhere.
Yeah.
All right, so those would be Commissioner Davis's edits that you're referring to.
Which have already been incorporated into the...
No, that's what Commissioner Brown was trying to tell you. This is just a compilation of everybody's potential edits.
Got
So
it.
we haven't agreed that they would go on.
But we don't
Well,
see
can
the
discuss it.
original one for comparison purposes
The
here.
original one is in black. Yeah. Right?
So the original one is in black, and just like we did with the
Where-
Distinguished Educators Report, where we
Right.
all went into Google Docs and made edits. So this comment here is Willa Powell's comment. This is what Commissioner Davis added, but all of the black is actually the original leadership profile that was drafted from all of the feedback from the surveys and the forums.
Okay, so it's still confusing because we
Yeah.
have narrative form here, and then
Yes.
we have bulleted form
Yes,
here. And
it's
so
very
we can't
confusing.
really tell what the original is and what the proposed is.
And I'll add one other complication to it, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but if you look at Willa's comments, it would appear that the only part in black is the candidate should be an energetic leader who will collaborate with all stakeholders. That is part of the original. Yeah. But also part of the original is that blue part, which would, the
first
program
blue
makes
part.
it think that it's Willa's edits, but it's not. You've changed that a bit, and that's why it went to blue, right?
Correct, and I think that the second paragraph, Commissioner Davis's, is an alternative opening paragraph.
Right.
Not in addition to, but instead of, so we have to choose or somehow merge those two paragraphs.
Right, that's right. So, and by the way, the search firm said they would do, obviously, you've heard them say it multiple times, whatever we wanted to do.
Mr. President?
Yes, ma'am.
The first line of the draft, Rochester is seeking a responsive instructional leader. I don't know what that means, and that would probably have to be far more defined. And then in Commissioner Davis's edits, that anti-racist, culturally responsive, I don't know what that means. And I think that that is, it would be difficult to define. How would we qualify that? What would we be looking for to determine if this person is racist or anti-racist? So I don't know how well that language would fare, because it almost seems, I don't know, it seems to me not to be the, and I won't use the word appropriate language, because I think we need to be assertive about this, but I do think that anti-racist, it would be difficult to define that. Versus, who is a person that's racist? So everybody can come in and say, I'm not a racist, and that's what they say anyway.
How do you measure it?
Yeah, how do you measure this? So
Right.
that would be my input for that. I would want to take that out.
Commissioner Davis?
The definition for anti-racist is not at the individual level, it's at the institutional level. And so we're looking for a leader who's well-versed historically and how policies, practices, and procedures operate in a district to create inequitable outcomes by race. So a person coming into the district who's anti-racist and knows the history of racism in education would understand why students are socially promoted, would understand why there's an over-identification of students for special education. So all these traditional symptoms of institutional racism that are in the district, we're looking for a leader who understands how policies, practices, and our procedures create those conditions, and they know how to address them.
Yeah, I would probably want to see that language as opposed to the anti-racist words, what you just described. In terms of identifying what anti-racist, and then when you're talking about from a systemic
which is in black and blue, and then I'm looking at what Commissioner Davis has proposed. And I prefer Commissioner Davis's insofar as it is more detailed, like Vice President Elliott said, what does it mean by responsive instructional leader? That doesn't really, and we're not supposed to be given a long dissertation about what we want in this profile because it's supposed to be short, but I do think you're right, it shouldn't just use catchy phrases. So I was thinking something like, using yours, Commissioner Davis, the Rochester City School District is seeking, and again, y'all can change this, I'm just throwing this out there. The Rochester City School District is seeking an outstanding, instructional, energetic, and collaborative leader who has an understanding of the importance of culturally relevant pedagogy and anti-racist, whatever we would call it. Moreover, the Rochester City School District is looking for a fiscally astute operational leader with demonstrated success. And I think a lot of what we might wordsmith it a little bit, but everything else that you have on there, I think is pretty detailed and strong. So, so I'm thinking about changing, I would suggest changing the first sentence a bit to, again, to read, the Rochester City School District is seeking an outstanding instructional, you could take or leave energetic, and collaborative is important in my mind, leader who understands the importance of culturally relevant pedagogy. And I think we should say something about general instructional. I mean, because you want somebody who understands culturally relevant pedagogy, but you want somebody with some experience and expertise in just education above and beyond that stuff. So I think if we change the first sentence a bit and somewhere put, I hear what you're saying about anti-racist, because that is different than understanding culturally relevant pedagogy. I think that's something, this is something to work with.
Joanne?
Yep, Commissioner LeBron?
So you guys have a summary paragraph on the top, and then some of the stuff that's actually mentioned in Commissioner Davis's statement is bulleted throughout the first and the back page. So we would be literally repeating at the very beginning everything that we've bulleted down below, minus the anti-racist specific language, because that's not technically mentioned here, but culturally diverse populations from a cultural competence perspective, particularly children of color, that was like specifically identified down below in the red, and on the instruction, management, communications, personal qualities, and leadership attributes, which I would personally still like to keep it in that format. So a very short summary at the top. My only thing is, like, we did these forums and these assessments to collect input from the community. We had small focus groups from the community to help us draft this leadership profile from their voice. And if we change it too much from the original, then what was the purpose of collecting input for them to get this leadership profile?
Commissioner Hallmark?
So I think the purpose is that we're the elected officials, and we do make the final decision about the profile. We take input, and then we consolidate and synthesize it into a narrative that works. I also find this process, wordsmithing at the dais, a little tedious. So I would suggest, I mean, I think we should all talk about stuff we want to change, but I think it might make more sense to first of all decide if we want a narrative or a bulleted list. And then just point out the problem words or phrases that we have, and then we can come back together, create a new draft, and do a Google Doc to do the wordsmithing.
Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, so I just want to follow up on that. And if that's how the board felt, then they should have communicated that to the people who did come out and take this survey and give their time to give input. So I just want to be clear about that. Like, I'm not 100% comfortable whether we're wordsmithing. It's almost like we're devaluing the voices of the people that did come forth, the parents that did meet with the search firm and give their input. Like I said before, I certainly had parents join to help us draft this leadership profile. The other thing I do want to say, it's my understanding that this is due tomorrow, and this is why we had a Google kind of doc format so that we can give input before today. So I think we do have to finalize this today because it is due tomorrow.
And
Dr.
that
Lee?
was my point. I understand that the job posting closes on the 15th, and at this point, we do not have a finalized profile or job description posted on the BWP website. So they are looking for a response as soon as possible.
Now, let me just say, because you missed this part of the discussion, because that was one of my concerns and other folks' concerns. Well, wait a second, why are we putting out an application if we don't even have a firm profile? And he said, no, listen, it's not only for the applicants, but it's also for you as you continue on your way through evaluating those applicants. So he was like, don't worry about that. Okay. So it's okay that we're doing this behind, because I kind of thought, and I think Commissioner Davis was also made the point that, wait a second, this is out of sync. But in any event, to the discussion that Commissioner Hallmark and Commissioner LeBron are having, I don't see anything wrong with us modifying this. One, as Commissioner Hallmark says, this is our job. Our job is to develop a profile, among other things, take input from the community, and make a decision about what that profile should say, just like it's our responsibility to listen to people about, during the budget hearings, about what they think is important with the budget. But ultimately, we have to make the decision, just like it's important we listen to the superintendent. But also, ultimately, we have to make the decision. Now, having said that, Commissioner LeBron, if you just break this down percentage-wise, they provided to us 2 pages worth of suggestions that they got from the community. You see the first page there, and then the second page. Even if we were to, hypothetically, go with some modified version of what Commissioner Davis is saying as an introduction, it wouldn't change 2/3 or 75% of what they wrote in the bullet form. I mean, we would still be communicating what the search firm said the community wanted in terms of its leader. And in fact, you make the argument, and I think it's a persuasive one, that the bullets replicate what's already in the summary. So there's nothing wrong about saying, taking Commissioner Davis's approach, I'm calling it your approach, and sort of using it as an introduction. We would hope every candidate would read the bullets and the introduction, but I think a small executive summary paragraph that sort of puts it all together is a good way to start. So again, I would say, I think you made the point that much of what she says in this first one, ELLs, SPEDs, a lot of that stuff is in the bullets. So, and finally, I think Dr. Lee is correct. It would be best, and I think Commissioner Hallmark, Commissioner LeBron, you are correct that it would be best to get this done today. And I think we can. I think there's not many changes have been recommended to the bullets. The only thing we really have to focus on is, one, Do you all want sort of this executive kind of summary in the beginning? And if you do, how should we change it?
So let me repeat what I just said. I think I would suggest we we decide whether we want a narrative or a bullet, one or the other, but not both. And then secondly, point out the problem words or phrases that we have. And then maybe somebody would volunteer to sort of incorporate that by the end of tonight, and then we could move on to other business. Just my suggestion.
Anybody want to respond to that, Commissioner LeBron?
No, I do agree with that portion, that it should be either a narrative or a bullet. But I honestly don't think I have a strong preference for one or the other, and I think it was already with a small narrative and bulleted, and so if we kept it with a smaller narrative and then bulleted, detailed, specifically line by line calling out, again, the voices of the community. So I do want to go back, though, and put this on the record, Van, because you said something about how we do the same thing when folks come in and it's budget season, or they come in and speak at the dais. When they're coming in to speak at the dais, they're given about 2 to 3 minutes, and we can't respond to them. At this forum, you know, I attended the forums that were held before the one that was canceled, and I attended the one here for staff, too. And it wasn't my place to speak, but rather to listen at those things. And again, we created an avenue to tell individuals that we wanted them to come and share their ideas, their experiences, their thoughts, centered around those 3 questions. And I just don't feel, I hear what you're saying, but on the flip side, for me, it feels like we're saying, come out as a community, and we're going to take some of your ideas, but not all of them, and incorporate all your ideas into this. And I'm not comfortable with that. I feel like essentially we're wasting people's time, and I don't want to waste people's time. If they came out earnestly and genuinely to give feedback, I want to be able to incorporate all of their feedback. I don't want to say, well, I'm the elected official and I know better than what you know as a parent or as an employee who has to deal with the consequences of the choices that we make, both parents, students, and staff. So I just want to throw that out there because I'm just not comfortable 100% with changing it away from the true original voices that came out.
Commissioner Powell?
Okay, I don't find this conversation particularly useful because none of the changes that I read here do I find stray from what the public told us, except perhaps the insertion of a phrase, exhibit above reproach ethical leadership. I mean, most of what Commissioner Davis inserted as an alternative opening paragraph summarizes the bullets. As far as I can tell, that's the only exception where there's brand new language. Everything else is taking language already there and just trying to make it, or craft it into intelligible written word. I'm comfortable with starting, as a starting place, deleting the opening paragraph that I wordsmithed and start with Commissioner Davis's. And the reason I'm comfortable with that is that her paragraph, I think, was crafted after mine and took out the language that I personally objected to. So if everyone else is comfortable with this, starting with what she wrote and adding, subtracting from there, I'm comfortable with that.
Commissioner Hallmark?
Never mind.
I do want to follow up on that. I don't know what to tell you, Willa, like in terms of what you feel is important, and I'm not going to say that what the community gave wasn't intelligent or intellectually written correctly, but what I will say is that one of the words that you had a problem with was visionary, and visionary and innovative instructional leader was the feedback that we got, not only from our teachers, but from the community and the members that came into and did the small meetings with the search firm. So, I'm going to second what Commissioner Elliott started with, to put an outstanding anti-racist. I don't know how to measure that, and I will be okay with going back to what you clarified, Commissioner Davis, and breaking that down a little bit further into other actionable, demonstratable, historical practices that they've had or programs, whatever you mentioned earlier. I would be okay with the breakdown of that word into a more tangible, result-based or evidence-based way when we're engaging these folks who are going to apply. But I'm personally, I do support visionary and innovative being on there. And I want to keep that as part of the community's voice.
Okay, so let's see if we can move this along. I think there's a way to sort of move forward here. Let's just sort of take a informal conversational vote. How many of you want an opening statement or not? I do.
I do.
3, just 3? Okay, so,
Or not.
or not.
You gave two options.
Well, yeah, in other words, what I'm getting at is we have right now 2 potential opening statements, a short one and a long one. I'm saying, do you want an opening statement at all? And then if enough people said, yeah, I want an opening statement, then I would say, do you want a short one or a long one? That's how we can do this, because we can't keep on talking about this, right?
Yeah,
So,
no, you just said or not in the same sentence. So like,
okay, yeah, I'm sorry. What I meant to say, do you want an opening statement? How many people want an opening statement? There was 3.
I would like another question, actually.
Okay, real quick though.
I would prefer a narrative instead of a bulleted list. And what you're offering is an opening statement, which is a narrative plus a bulleted list. So you're offering 3 options
Okay,
here. So
all
I
right.
would prefer a narrative, straight narrative.
All right, so let's back up then. All right, that's fair. How many people want just a bullet list in our profile? Just bullet. Nope. All right, so nobody just wants bullet. How many people want an opening plus bullet? There's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Okay, so that's what we're going to have. Now, the only question remains is, not the only one. Do we want a short opening or a long opening?
I want something that's comprehensive, so if that's short or long.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to describe it. A comprehensive or a shorter opening. I would prefer, yes.
can you just ask one or the other at one time?
Okay. All right, yeah, thank you, Commissioner Shepard. How many people want, I'll take Vice President Elliott's description of it. How many people want a comprehensive opening? I do. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, all right. So the comprehensive has it. So if we were to look at these 2, one from BWP and one that, again, I know Commissioner Davis doesn't.
Community, I just want to clarify, the one that the community gave BWP.
Which was what? I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's okay. Vice President Elliott, go ahead.
So what did the community give in terms of a narrative?
They gave the Rochester City School, well, it's hard to kind of tell from these edits because of the blue, but the Rochester City School District is seeking a responsive instructional leader with a successful experience with a culturally diverse student population.
That's what they gave?
No, I don't know if that's
Hold on, one person at a time. Go ahead, finish up, Commissioner Brown.
the strike-through. So the Rochester City School District is seeking an outstanding, visionary, and innovative instructional leader with successful experiences in working with a culturally diverse student population. That was the beginning of what they gave from the community forums.
So the only thing I would say that, Commissioner LeBron, is, respectfully, that is not what the community gave. They wrote that, right? And I think it's fair comment to say, just in response, that for what Commissioner Davis wrote includes everything that is in that short blurb and a lot of things that are in the bullets that are going to follow. So I just don't want people who would vote in favor of who would vote and say, no, we don't want the shorter version, that I don't want people to think that they're rejecting the community's input, because that's not fair to say.
Van, it was on video. We could go back to the video, but when they came and gave the presentation, visionary and innovative instructional leadership was some of their top responses from the surveys and the forums.
Okay, all right, so listen, I'm not disagreeing with that. If you want to put if you think, because you don't want to, we want to make sure we don't leave the community input out, the community words out, I'm down with that. So we could take those words visionary and incorporate them into the more comprehensive piece. I'm not saying we shouldn't include words that they picked up, or you or I or anybody else who attended might have picked up from the community. Absolutely. But we've made a decision that we want to be more comprehensive. So the question will be, maybe you can help here, is how do we put visionary in Commissioner Davis's more comprehensive piece?
Are we leaving in the anti-racist language?
I don't want to. We could vote on that now, too.
Well, I can tell you this, that I attended forums where they were talking about anti-racist. The one at East High School, the people that were there were talking about anti-racist. I was at that one, so.
Yeah, I don't know what that
Bless
means.
you.
I really don't know what that means, in all honesty, because it can just take, well, the reason I brought it up, let me just be simple, short about, the reason I was bringing it up is to Commissioner LeBron's point about involving some of the language that we got from the participants, the community, is that visionary language, that can be somewhere in there, is what my point was. So the anti-racist language, we could talk about a little later, but that's what I just wanted to see where we could fit that language.
So I know that Dr. Lee is an exceptional writer, and I don't want to continue this exercise. No. I don't want to continue this exercise all night because we have other important work to do. So I think there's consensus that the word and phrases like visionary should be in there. What else did you say that you were?
Innovative.
Innovative.
But I do want to clarify that Commissioner Davis earlier, when Commissioner Elliott, you brought it up, clarified and went a little bit deeper into anti-racist. And I do want to use that language and what you define that as in terms of an individual, and I would like that language in there.
In the comprehensive piece.
Yes, because
Okay.
I do think that we can ask questions from an individual around what you shared. I
Okay.
think we can ask for examples. We can then Google them when they leave, no, and see if that work actually happened. But I just want to be able to have some measurable ways, if people are using general words, how to measure that while we're doing interviews or selections.
So since Dr. Davis was clear about how you could explain the phrase anti-racist earlier on, what I would suggest is that that Dr. Davis listened very closely, that you take that paragraph, that comprehensive paragraph, include phrases like visionary, innovative, explain, as you did earlier today, the term anti-racist, because it seems like we all want some reference to that. And I would ask respectfully that you include collaborative. Collaborative actually appears in the smaller version, so it's obviously something he got from the community. If you could redo this, pass it on to Shanae, and then distribute it to us all, and we can give a thumbs up or thumbs down. I think that's really the best way to do it, guys. We're sort of running out of time. Commissioner Shepard?
Yeah, while we're putting it after this, I want to make sure that you also keep in energetic, because if they're not like, damn, we don't want them.
All right, now. You got that, Commissioner Davis?
I got that.
You got that?
And
Vice President Elliott?
I just, one other point, when you mentioned the term collaborative, she is, Commissioner Davis does clarify or explain some points of collaboration. The candidate must have expertise in negotiating with bargaining units, expanded parent and community engagement, and engage in student voice. So that's a definition. It could be used as a definition of collaboration.
It could. I think that word is, and you're right, that is what collaboration is about. But I just like that word. I think it summarizes not only a verb, but who a person is. You talk about your collaborative. So anyway, if you could work it in there, that would be great. Commissioner Hallmark?
So first of all, Commissioner Davis, did you agree to take on this task tonight?
Yeah, that's first of all. No.
But just.
No, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for doing that. And I would, my problem phrase is culture of fear. I'd prefer challenging environment.
I agree with that. Any other suggestions for Commissioner Davis? Commissioner Powell?
It seems to me that an expansion of the phrase anti-racist might legitimately belong under personal and qualities and leadership attributes, that maybe a bullet that expands on anti-racist could go there to satisfy Commissioner Elliott's concern that it lacks definition?
I think it would go more so under instruction with cultural responsibility.
But
As long as it's in the bullet somewhere.
I just want to remind you all, I think, and I hear some conversation going on, it is I think it's the phrase or the word that
That's
they
right.
are concerned about.
Exactly right,
They
yeah.
prefer that you explain it as you had previously, rather than just use that phrase. So do your best. In terms of the bullets, there was just a few edits that were made. Does anybody want to change, or who's the red? Who is that?
That's me.
That's you? So you added that stuff from all right? Anybody have any issue with any of those edits?
No, I like those, and I want to keep them.
Now, I would just point out under personal qualities and leadership that I included in there, have, and let me just point out, I'm looking at it now, under personal qualities, we do have can address, deal with, and help resolve issues of race and racism. So that may also address in this bulletin from under there, what we're trying to get to in the narrative. But what I wrote, have the courage to implement accountability measures to ensure success in student leadership. I think that we need a strong leader when it comes to accountability. I think so. I think that, I don't know if we need to put that language within the narrative or something similar to that. But Shanae, are you going to be working with this, on this with?
Commissioner Davis is, yeah.
Well, no, she's going to work on the comprehensive opening, but I think Cynthia, Vice President Elliott is correct to address this issue about the bullets to you.
Oh, I apologize.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, so the one on the last page under personal qualities, have the courage to implement accountability measures. I'm wondering if some language similar to that, more generalized language, should be in the narrative.
Is it the last bullet?
Under personal qualities and leadership
So you
attributes.
want the language from this bullet to be incorporated into the opening
I
statement?
guess I'm wondering if that should be.
You're talking.
Yeah, now you're talking about.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
all
okay,
right.
that's what I thought.
Okay, yeah, if some of that language, and Commissioner Davis, you can take a look at that and see what you think that if it should be included in there. I just think something around being strong and are willing to not have a problem with holding people accountable and systems accountable is necessary. And that may need to be in the narrative portion.
All right, so when Commissioner Davis completes this task, she'll email it to everyone. Actually, Shanae will email it to everyone with the notation that if we don't hear from you in 2 hours or 3 hours, we're going to assume that you approve it. So,
Exactly.
so look at your email inbox. Yes.
I've asked that Commissioner Davis submit an edited version by noon tomorrow. I don't know if that's
think you can do that?
a reasonable request. Is that sufficient?
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about, Vice President Elliott had one suggestion that she made, which is on the first page, underneath the paragraph, where it talks about particularly children of color. So I agree with the notion and the sentiment, but I'm not sure if that can be worded differently. It just sounds just a little bit exclusive.
Yeah, and probably like the anti-racist language.
Yeah. But I agree with the
Yep.
sentiment, so I'm wondering if it can be, phrased in something like stemming from, like, urban upbringing, or something like that. I would
I'm
have to
open.
think. Okay,
I'm open.
all righty.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Shepard, you're talking about instruction, last bullet?
Yeah, where it says particularly children of color. And I 100% agree with that. Just if we could say it a little bit more appealing to.
Do you want to give Dr. Lee some suggestions now about?
Yeah, so I just told Dr. Lee that I can work on it, and then I'll send them to Cynthia, if that's okay with the rest of the board. And then if me and Cynthia can agree on it, then we can send it to.
By noon.
Yeah.
I want to just add a suggestion to it, Nat, now, or Commissioner Shepherd. You can maybe, Dr. LaLanguage, should say diversely, from a diverse urban, I don't even know, because I don't even think all of our children have urban experiences. Some of our kids are from migrant populations. So I don't know. I think you got to think about that.
Commissioner Davis?
No, go ahead and finish.
No, go ahead.
No, Commissioner Shepherd had something else to say.
Oh, I didn't, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and I just wanted to clarify for the record so I don't get beat up, but I said for it to say to be more appealing, that's not really what I meant, to be appealing to anybody. I wanted the language to be changed so that it is more inclusive.
Commissioner Davis?
I guess one thing is to be in a district that's majority of color. I don't think that when you read this in the context of the district that this person's coming to, that it would be exclusive language to leave it the way that Commissioner Elliott put it in. So that's just my comment for that.
And when you were talking, Commissioner Shepherd, just as you finished, I was thinking the exact same thing, that when we're in what I would ask you to keep in mind is that because we are a majority people of color district, to your point, I think is correct, that we do highlight that, and that those are going to be some of the issues around student achievement that we're going to have to address. So they're going to have to know their population. So, given that, if you can word it in a way that may be more palatable.
Yes, yep, okay. and I 100% agree with that.
Yep.
Just wanted the language just to be changed
a
little bit.
Yep.
Because, I mean, majority is not all, and so I don't want people to just, feel left out. But I do want to drive that point home because Vice President Elliott does make a great point in regards to our population.
All right, so you'll work on, I'm sorry, Commissioner
The second
Davis.
thing is in the first sentence under instruction, I wanted to also insert from an anti-racist and cultural competence perspective. Because racism as it manifests in education and instruction, one example is using Eurocentric history and text, et cetera. So we also want to, a leader who recognizes how racism in education appears in instruction.
Just briefly, I support that. I mean, it's a tough word to hear, but other ways you hear it in America, in the boardroom, the courtroom, the classroom, it sounds a lot nastier, right? People get denied jobs, people are treated in ways, White House says crazy stuff, and we're, not that anybody here, we're reluctant to use the word racist. And my point is, this word, this problem manifests itself in much more uglier ways, in words and phrases that we cringe, but this is sort of, actually, it's a politically correct way to put together a very troublesome part of it. So I think it's the right word to use. It can be explained, it can be expounded upon, but I think to the extent we say it's racist.
Well, but the flip side of that is that you have, but you may not know where I'm going with this one, Commissioner Barnes, but hang on with me.
I'm with you.
But on the same token, you've got racists who are calling those who are trying to work against racism racist, right? Well, and so to try to, I heard Donald Trump calling somebody, you're a racist. And these people are, trying to work against racism, but even if you just bring up the word, you're a racist, so some people, may call you a racist or call you a racist because you just brought up the term. And so that's why I think that we have to explain or provide more information about what that actually means. I'm not afraid of the term. I just want, when we have people who are considering this position, that they understand what we're talking about. And people may not understand what this language is about, although you do say that it's out there, on people who are in these circles understand what that means. I would like to just make sure that we're clear about what it is, or if I'm asked what it is, and others are asked, what do you mean about anti-racist, so.
Commissioner LeBron?
So if it's in I just want to say, if I spell it out in the new paragraph that I'll be sending, that's the only reason why I said I ended it added it there because it's already spelled out in the first paragraph.
Right, so.
Commissioner LeBron?
I don't want to have it because I do think it's still something that's left to interpretation, even though there's a definition on Google. Even if people read that definition, they don't always interpret and perceive the definition the same way. So again, something that's going to be more measurable, because I think we also have to remember that this is essentially a job description. And so if you're looking for a job and you read that, I don't feel like I'm a racist, and I'm a woman of color, and my children are women of color. So I would not understand how I would measure that, even though the majority of my work has been advocating for other people of color and others, but majority people of color. So I would just personally, I know you're going to define it up there. If you want to wordsmith what you put up there and reincorporate it into the bullet and send that to in a way that it kind of makes sense. The other piece too is that when I think of someone who's going to come in with a strong understanding, I'm just going to put the word in there, of anti-racist teaching and learning process, it's still a complex nature within this district, because they can have that understanding. That doesn't mean that they're going to be able to come in and peel off all the layers to address it right away. And I don't want to give anybody the impression that someone we hired is going to come in with that quote-unquote skill set, and we don't even have a common curriculum. We are still struggling with curriculum. And then even deeper beyond curriculum, if you look at what curriculums are offered nationally, locally, they do tend to be history that's not necessarily of people of color. So I think it's a much more deeper complex that we can ever address in one bullet. But again, I personally would like to see it defined, if you want to wordsmith it, so that it also co-aligns with teaching and learning.
Okay, let's call the question and move on. We've got some great colleagues working on this. Commissioner Shepard, Commissioner Elliott are going to work on that bullet part. Commissioner Davis is going to work on our comprehensive introduction to the profile. And you have until noon to turn it in, is that what you said? And then we'll give them what, 2 hours to respond, or the 2 hours. 2 hours, so by 2 o'clock. All right. All right. Thank you very much. You know, we can't, as folks understand, we can't discuss this stuff in executive session. This has to be discussed very openly, and just like any group trying to work through a very important document, it takes a little time, but I think you all put some good effort into it, and I think we'll end up with a better profile. So thank you very much for your effort. All right, so next is discussion of the board's response to Rock the Future. This does not have to be a long discussion, but again, as I said a few minutes ago, it has to be a public discussion. It's not something we could discuss in executive session. I do want you all to know that at our officers meeting today, Linda, Dan, Cynthia, and I talked about this particular issue, but obviously it's important that the full board talk about it. And to make this conversation very constructive, and it doesn't have to end with your approval to do this, but my thought was that rather than sending a letter to Rock the Future or anybody else, or even the mayor, I thought, particularly since we don't know, and Dr. Kino doesn't know when we're to get a response, I thought maybe we should write a letter to the commissioner, concluding with, we're looking forward to hearing your response to our response, but maybe beginning with, we understand, something like this, and we can wordsmith it and send it to you all, figuring that Dan and I would sign it. But basically saying, this is my thought, that we understand there's great anxiety about the district. We believe we've put forth a comprehensive, meaningful, thoughtful response to the DE's report, and in sum and substance, we look forward to hearing your reply in terms of how we move the community forward. Without any, this is just my thought, without any engaging them in a conversation about, oh, Rock the Future this, or the mayor that, just keeping her focused on what we were charged to do and what she is charged to do, which is to provide a response to our response. Let me begin down here and work my way. Commissioner Shepard?
She said nothing. I do.
Commissioner LeBron?
So a couple of things. Back a few months ago, when we were having discussions around connected communities, you said we could not talk about an organization publicly, but I'm prepared to speak about what the whole Rock the Future thing. If you're saying now that we can speak about it, when we were going to have a discussion around connected communities and we were going to make that vote, and we did a public vote here, and then we went into executive session to have further conversations. Do you remember that, Carl? With the connected communities things. I just want clarification because I recall being told that we needed to discuss it in executive session because it's a group or organization.
We were talking about entering into an agreement with them.
Okay.
Which involved them, an appointment to a particular status in the district. That was appropriate for executive session. This, I agree with the president, is not.
Okay, just for clarity as to why we went into executive and not the other. So one, I don't want to be attached to no letter to the Commissioner Ely. I think she has enough letters to read and enough work to do. So it's a no for me, even if you guys move forward with that. So the Rock the Future van, I do want to say that I am frustrated, and I'm going to keep Rock the Future out of it. I'm never going to be upset with any group or organization that is doing advocacy work and believes that they're doing it to the best of their ability. I want to stay away from that conversation. So I'm not ever going to judge or anybody for wanting to do advocacy work the way that they see fit. What I am upset about, though, Van, is that I do feel that you as our board president have been attending Rock the Future meetings, and we've never heard any report back from you about Rock the Future. That's one. Two, when I found out about the letter, it was Friday through media contacting me, and then I found out that you got a copy of the letter on Thursday, and we were all here Thursday. We were at the board meeting, we had executive session, the letter never came up. So I was upset to learn that you had gotten a copy on Thursday, the media is contacting me Friday. I had no idea what they were discussing, what the letter said, because I hadn't seen the copy of the letter at that point, and it wasn't until we got an update from the superintendent where the letter was attached. But that was not till Friday evening. So I was upset about that. And then I had to ask myself, well, if our board president has been attending Rock the Future meetings, what have the discussions that have happened at Rock the Future, and why hasn't the board been informed through our board leader? So those are the things I'm upset about, and I did want to put that out on the record because I went to the press conference too, just to kind of get some clarity and hear a little bit more about what they were trying to advocate for, and then it came full circle for me that these meetings have been going on for a while, and I do recall that at one point you actually asked me if I wanted to be a representative on there, and I agreed to, and then no connections were ever made, but that you have been attending those meetings.
Well, it probably would be appropriate. I know some people wanted to say some stuff, but it probably would be appropriate if I responded. First things first. Dan, I hate to pull you into this, but Dan will tell you, he called me, what was it? Thursday? Thursday, I think it was Thursday, and said, Van, I'm paraphrasing, have you seen this letter from Rock the Future? And I said, no, I hadn't even seen it. What are you talking about? And then he began to describe for me what was in this letter. Now, let me be clear about this in a way that doesn't require a lot of words. And in fact, Commissioner LeBron, you and Commissioner Shepard know that the executive director of that organization sent you a letter. I don't know if you've seen that email. Have you seen that email?
Yeah.
Okay, well, no, that wasn't a pause.
Okay.
In that letter, it said, I apologize because I gave the impression that Commissioner White, President White, knew about the details of this initiative prior to everybody else finding out. She made it very clear. I found out about it when everybody else found out about it. All right, so that's the first thing. And she apologized because apparently at the press conference, and a reporter told me this, she kind of let it sound as if I knew about this whole thing all along. And she said to you all, and if you haven't had the email, I'll send it to you again. She said, she clearly apologized. She said, President White, Van didn't know about this any earlier than anybody else. And she included you all because apparently everybody's listed on this infamous conveners list. So that's the first thing. Now, for folks who don't know, and I know Ray has been at some of the meetings. I think Ray has been at some of the meetings, these convener meetings. I have been at some of them. I have not attended a lot of them. Barbara has been at some of them. Let's be clear about this. Let's not confuse the facts. These convener meetings, at none of these convener meetings, they've been going on for at least a year or two, maybe longer. They've never talked about anything like they discussed the other day. And I think as she makes clear in her email, this conversation about what Rock the Future wanted to do in terms of, and it's hard for me to even describe because it's not really actually very clear what they want to do. What they had come up with in their executive committee, which was not developed by this convener group, which I have attended occasionally, this idea to be involved in some kind of leadership capacity, this was something developed in their executive committee basically overnight without the entire convener group being involved. And I think if you read that email, Commissioner LeBron, you should know that's exactly what she's saying, that Van and others, including, and I tell you, when Dan told me, the first thing I did as board president was call her up and said, what in the heck are you guys doing? Why wouldn't you at least tell the superintendent about this initiative? So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, Commissioner LeBron, because I think, but no, Commissioner LeBron, I'm not finished. I respect you. I listen to you. Please let me finish. And so I think that email, which if others are interested in it, and I suggest that you don't bother because it's looking in the rearview mirror, that email made it very clear, not only was she wrong for giving the impression that I knew, but that email also describes basically the chronology, and that this idea that was presented yesterday was presented to most of the community, including myself, including Dan. Nobody knew what they were doing, which is one of the reasons why I said that I think, I said in the paper, they failed the test of principled leadership, which is to communicate with people, particularly the Board of Education, because we are the ones that are going to make something happen. Dan is the one who's going to be the person to make it happen. Principals and chiefs, they didn't talk to any of us. And I want to repeat, Commissioner Brown, they didn't talk to me. And I agree with you if you think you should have known, because I think I should have known. I think Dan should have known. I think Linda should have known. I think our chief should have known. I think Beth should have known. And they didn't tell us. And that should have been made very clear to you in the letter. But looking forward, I think the question is, do we want to send the letter? And I'm not trying to say I'm not interested in hearing what your response is, but I do want to say, let's be constructive about this. It's happened. Whatever they did, they did. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. I was suggesting, it's just a suggestion, that we write a letter to the commissioner, basically using this as an opportunity to say, hey, when are we going to hear a response to our very thorough, very thoughtful response to the Dees report? Yes, Commissioner LeBron.
So actually, I'm gonna throw Natalie Shepherd in on it too. But she and I both saw the email around 6 this morning, and we were having a discussion around it because we're up early. But in this email, she said that you didn't know until last Thursday, and that's my point. You knew last Thursday we had a board meeting and executive session, and you did not mention it to us. I found out Friday through the press asking for comments on a letter that I had no idea. But that's what the director of Rock the Future also emailed myself and Commissioner Shepherd, that she apologized because there were some conversations that you may have known as early as February 8th, and I think that's what she was clarifying, that you knew last Thursday. But that's my point too, that you knew last Thursday. We had a board meeting, we had executive session, the letter never came up. Rock the Future never came up, any of the conversations of a potential letter come up, but you knew about the letter on Thursday. And that's all I'm saying, Van, like you were elected by the majority of this board. I did not vote for you to be board president, but the majority did, so that's your role. So your role is also to communicate to the rest of the board any and every information that you receive as board president. So clearly you were copied in on this email from them and were informed of the letter by Thursday. It's your responsibility as the board and the leadership of this board to inform the rest of the board. I should not have to find out from the media reaching out for a comment on a letter I have no idea what they're talking about. That's all. That was my point. And I saw her email, and I would ask you to go back and read it too.
So I want to I've watched our meetings, I've listened to our meetings, and the worst thing that I think happens in some of these meetings is we keep on putting that record back on, and we're not addressing other important issues. Let me see if I can say something very brief, and then we need to move on and focus on things that are important. Because sadly, the grievances that you have about not being informed is what I said to Dan. I thought the way they approached this was wrong. And by the way, let me repeat, the email that she said she sent to me, how I knew or how Dan knew, was an email that she says was sent to everybody, including you. And I said to her, I didn't get any email. So here's the thing. I think your grievance, the concern that you have, is a legitimate one. Why weren't you told? And I just want everybody to understand, and Dan can back me up on this, and many people that I've spoken to, I have the same grievance. And let me be clear about this, Commissioner Brown, because you've implied that I'm part of these convener group. Nobody was talking about what they laid out the other day. So maybe we all can learn something from this. Certainly Jackie Campbell and the conveners and the executive committee can learn that it's important to communicate. And if you're saying to me, Van, just because somebody else messes up, you should try to be as responsive as possible. Share. Okay, I'll accept that. But I wanted you to know that when I was talking to Jackie, and because I found out through Dan, I said, I haven't seen anything about this. So if your point is, right at that moment, I could have called you all and told you all what was going on, absolutely, I could have done it. But I'm telling you, this was a moving target, and I was just trying to figure out whether this thing was true or not. So I think, again, rather than pointing fingers of blame, because that's what people want us to do, internally say, oh, why didn't you do this? When in fact, the real, I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, the real culprit here is an organization that wouldn't talk to people who are in the midst of providing services to children. But instead, we're spending 15 minutes talking about why didn't Van, within 12 hours, talk to us. Now, could I? Absolutely. If I could do it again, hopefully I would have the presence of mind and do it right away. But let's not forget, the real problem here is that an organization said, we got the answers for every instructional, cultural issue for this community, and they didn't bother to call this man, and they didn't bother to call me before they came up with that plan. That's the real problem. Commissioner Powell?
I affirm the idea of sending a letter to the Commissioner Ilya, prompting her for a response, whether it be approval or conditional approval or recommendations for change or some, just prompting her for some response, because so far we have no response. But I would take that further and suggest a letter to the editor, maybe something we could post on our district website as well, essentially articulating that the Rock the Future agenda in this instance assumes failure on our part. Because you can't talk about establishing a new governance model without assuming that we will fail to deliver on the 14 points specifically in the leadership and governance portion of the DE's report, but but basically assuming failure to deliver on the entire DE report, not just the leadership and governance portion, but it assumes failure. And we need to make it clear to the community that any action, any recommendations for a new governance model needs to come after we have been given the opportunity to execute the plan that we submitted. That's what the community needs to know, is that an awful lot has been made about the Rock the Future proposal, but it hasn't been put in the proper context. And the proper context is that we have 6 months to deliver on our actions while the distinguished educator is here, and our plan lays out an implementation over a 12-month or more period of time. So any conversation along these lines is premature and it presumes failure.
Anybody else? Commissioner Davis?
In regard to the letter that you were talking about putting together to send to Commissioner Elia, due to the language that you were talking about, I wouldn't support it. Because I did not support the DE response that we sent in, so I wouldn't support such language as that we sent you a thorough, et cetera, response. In regard to Rock the Future, I do not believe that any one group can be the conduit for the entire community. What I would like to see, and this is what I shared in my communication to Commissioner Elia that was sent on February 8th with our response, is to see one table, to see a table where all groups and individuals who are concerned about the future of our children to come together. And I say each person or each group has one piece of a 100-piece puzzle. And so we each bring our piece to the same table, a common table, and work together. That's the model that I would be looking at.
Anybody else? Commissioner Shepard?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I don't think that it's necessary for us to send a letter to the commissioner. I mean, we've already sent in a response. We should just wait. Although I am frustrated, and I've said it publicly that I am frustrated with how everything played out. I did get the email from Rock the Future this morning, the one that you're talking about. I read through it, and I'm still under the impression, based off of the email and just what she said in the email, that there are things that were talked about, and this can be a discussion off record, but I think that it's important to note that when Commissioner LeBron brings up the fact that you go to meetings and get information and it doesn't get back to us, I just really want to drive that point home, because that was my frustration months ago, is that I walk into rooms, I go to a lot of community meetings, and a lot of times this board has a reputation based off of the fact that there's information out there that we don't know. So like I said before, individual commissioners are acting based off of unknown information or based off of what was put in front of us, and it's information that these groups have given to you that just hasn't gotten back to us. And so I do think that it's an important thing. I mean, nobody's perfect, but I am hoping that we can hopefully change this, because I made some pretty strong statements to the media based off of the fact that I didn't know what was going on as a board member when an entity is trying to do something in our district. I mean, we can't be bypassed on this. I don't see that being a collaborative effort if the board in its entirety is bypassed. And even though I'm frustrated with how everything played out, I do think that it is important to note that when things come to you, that we should get it. I don't think that that's too much to ask. I mean, you said 12 hours is a short amount of time, but something so significant as this, I don't know how to change a behavior in a leader that would think that it's very important to pass at least this information off.
So let me say again, if you look at Jackie Campbell's email to you, she says she sent this letter that she sent to the commissioner to everyone, including you all. So while you are saying, why didn't you give it to me? Jackie Campbell is saying she sent it to everyone, including every board member. And let me tell you something. I got to say, I said to her, I never got it, Jackie. When I said to Dan, what letter are you talking about? I hadn't even seen it. So that's the first thing. She says she sent to everybody. Secondly, I want to repeat to you all, so that it's very clear, just because I was attending these convener meetings, and this is part of the problem when I say they failed the test of leadership, I do not want a single person to walk away from here thinking, from anything that anybody says here, that because I attended an occasional conveners meeting, that there was conversation about this. They talked about this behind closed doors with this executive committee. And the only people that found out about it were people that got that email on Thursday, which she says included you and me and everybody else. But when I called Dan, I hadn't even seen it. So, Commissioner Shepard, I just want to be clear. You're saying I'm attending these meetings and I didn't tell you all about it. Let me repeat. This grand idea, as you and I would say, to put one group or one agency in charge of this district was not an idea that they shared with anybody except that executive committee. And I'm not on that executive committee. So please do not say, you were attending these convener meetings, because I don't want people to, and maybe this wasn't what you were saying, I don't want people to get the impression that because I attended an occasional convener meeting that they were talking about this. They weren't. Yes, ma'am.
That's fine for you to clarify that, but you're absolutely right. That's not what I said.
Okay.
What I said is that you went to these meetings, and I'm not specifically talking about this topic specifically. What I'm talking about is a couple months ago, I had requested to be a representative for Rock the Future because I felt like we were neglecting them as a district, and I wanted to know what they were talking about. And you attended a meeting at the beginning of February, and I didn't know you attended the meeting until she just sent me this email this morning or last night, whenever she sent it, that you had attended that meeting. And I'm sure that there was other information that was talked about. You didn't tell us anything about what was going on at Rock the Future. That was my whole point about when you attend these meetings, and I guess specifically because I asked to also attend this meeting and I did not get connected either, that you did not give back any information, regardless if they were talking about this or anything else. Nothing came back to us, and I just found out that you actually attended the meeting I wanted to go to. That is what my frustration is.
I just want to add, so let me just clarify that Jackie's email said that the rest of the conveners were informed on Thursday. That included for the district, you, Dan, and Linda. We're not listed as conveners. If you go to their website, you're listed. It actually used to be Cecilia Golden, and it used to be Barbara Dean that were listed, but because Linda and Dan now attend as the conveners. So yes, what Jackie said was, she only sent this email to myself, to Natalie, to Van, just to clarify, because there was some conversations and some misunderstanding that perhaps the conversation around the letter was happening at the February 8th meeting. So she wanted to clarify that you didn't know all the way to February 8th, but which is why when I started to address my concerns, it was the fact that you knew about it on Thursday. And we were here for a board meeting. We were here for the Black History Month celebration and awards. We were here for the board meeting. We were here till past 12 midnight for the executive session, and not one time did this come up to say, hey, and I do agree with Commissioner Shepard, it's a critical thing. It's not something like, hey, we're gonna get a proposal down the line and it's not something that we need immediate attention. Something like this is gonna drive the media. Something like this is going to warrant phone calls on Friday as people, media has been leaked and information and folks are trying to figure it out. But at the minimum, and she put this in writing, and I would encourage you to go back to read it, that she said this decision had been made to send a letter and he did not know until this last Thursday. That was my point. Like, you knew a whole day before. I have to find out through the media. And I, as a commissioner, and any other commissioner here, we should not be finding out through the media that this is coming down the pipeline when our board president knew about the letter. And I know that you just said you had called Dan. All of that happened on that Thursday. I cannot believe, and I just want to clarify that we're not conveners on the board listed on their website or as a convener, except for you, Dan, and Linda.
So, go ahead.
And I shouldn't probably weigh in, but just to clarify, whatever they sent to us was really asking for signatures. There was no discussion. And at that point, they had this convoluted way of trying to get everybody's signature. I don't remember whether it was where it was Thursday or whatever, because we were here till midnight. Jackie came over on Friday to really apologize in a sense, because she knew none of us were really informed of this. And the only thing, whether we do a letter or not, the board has been very open about, we'll take partners in a collaborative sense, and none of this really rang true that they were looking for partners or any collaboration. So I probably should have reacted quicker. I was surprised because the original convener thing, everybody was positive, and in fact, everybody was positive. There was this great working together. Beth was there. Cecilia was there. We had a lot of people there. It was very positive. At the end of the meeting, they said, anybody who hasn't read the district's response, go read it. And from there, we heard nothing after that. So I was surprised in all that. And I think Jackie was not surprised, but she knew any improvement the district takes will be in partnership. There's nobody outside of the district itself that can really do a lot of this work. So again, whatever the board's direction on a letter or no letter, the commissioner's probably made up her mind about what she's doing. But clearly, our interest is we'll take partners and people who want to collaborate with us always. Our door is open to that kind of help.
Commissioner Davis?
So just for clarity, on February 8th, you're saying that yourself and President White and Linda all went to the, and Beth all went to a meeting, okay. And then there's a letter that's out there that not all board members received. Is that something that we can get a copy of?
Let me just say, to respond, there was a meeting on February the 8th, and it was a meeting that Rock the Future had convened. A number of people were here, you've indicated that. That was to discuss basically what Rock the Future, to discuss actually the DE's report. I think that was the agenda. And one of the things that was discussed was how could we move, all these people in the room, a lot of people, it was an invitation to a lot of community leaders. And at the end of the meeting, they said, who wants to, it was revealed that we had done our response. And this meeting was about the DE's report. So at the end of the meeting, they said, well, who wants to talk about or have a work group to look at the district's response? Because that wasn't really discussed at the meeting. And so a couple people raised their hand, and so they created this task force to look at our response. And as Dan said, it was sort of a kumbaya kind of meeting. There was no indication that anybody was going to do anything or say anything. Everybody was supposed to be working together. And they convened this group. Now, I'm going to tell you, I think they knew what and there's nothing in writing to say that, I think they knew what they were going to do all along, to be quite honest. But at that meeting, there was no discussion of potentially writing a letter to the commissioner and getting signatures. So fast forward about 4 weeks later, I don't know, when Dan calls me and says there's this letter out, everybody is shocked because, me and Dan at least, because we're not thinking this was on anybody's agenda. So it never came up during the February 8th meeting that they were going to do this. I will say, the February 8th meeting, Commissioner Shepard, to your point, why didn't I let folks know of the February 8th meeting? As you all know, we used to regularly issue president's letters. Regularly did that. And I never made any ifs, ands, or buts about it. I never said I was the one drafting them. You know who was drafting them? I said it before, Shanae. Shanae drafted those letters because what I would say at the end of the week is, okay, this is what I did. Now, you all realize that Shanae had been away. And I told you all, we probably weren't going to be doing the president's letter. But had Shanae been around, had we had the support staff, I would have reported, because I've reported on many meetings that I've been to, that I was at a February 8th meeting. And matter of fact, I told people it took everything in my power to go to that meeting because I knew it was going to be a sort of beat up the district meeting. And I would have reported that as I reported, but I didn't report it. And if I could do it again, I would take the time to do what I've never had to do in the past, which is to type my own president's letter. I don't type them any more than you all, many of you type your committee reports. We have staff that helps us do that. That's generally what I would have had done on February 8th. I apologize that was not done, because then you would have known. There was this meeting that they talked about looking at our report and synthesizing it. But what would not have been reported in my president's letter is that they had this grand plan to basically be the organization to turn the district around. That never was revealed to anybody, and it wasn't until I got that letter. And thankfully, Dan sent a letter to you all. And to your point, Commissioner LeBron, I'm just going to be honest. Nobody does it, and I've said this about my work and other people's work. Nobody does, and I know you know this, because you're not perfect. Nobody does this job perfectly. And when I'm literally, you want to be in the moment with me, I'm trying to figure out, is this even true? Because I don't even have the letter. It wasn't discussed on February 8th. So I'm literally saying to Dan, this can't be true. So Dan said to me, I'll get you a copy of the letter if I can get one. And I said, well, I'll try to find one myself. So I eventually did get one. You know where I got it from? The media. So again, to your point and to Commissioner Shepard's point, nobody does this job perfectly. I did the best I could under the circumstance, but let's not spend 40 minutes talking about what we did wrong or what I did wrong, when the real culprit here is an organization that would try to allegedly fix this district without talking to you all. Yes, ma'am.
So, Van, I hear you, but again, first of all, for me, it cannot be the excuse that the support staff weren't here. Again, you're our president, and you were with us on Thursday. You could have gave us an oral report to say, hey, I got this letter. Dan sent the letter to all of us via email, so we do have a copy of it on Friday. It came from Ms. Simone Bruce on behalf of Dan. The president's letter was there. There was a copy of the letter in that email. The DNC has it with the people who signed it, so if you're interested to see the signatures, that's on the Democratic Chronicle's website. But, Van, this is not to bash you. There is constructive criticism here about your leadership abilities and communication abilities with your colleagues as the board. Again, this board majority, excluding me, voted for you for the president because they felt that you had presidential qualities and leadership qualities to lead this board. So communications is one of the biggest pieces. I'm fully aware, and I want to put this on the record too, because I don't want no misunderstandings that there was conversations about this letter at the February 8th. But by Thursday, when we had, again, our Black History celebration, our board meeting, and our executive session to past midnight, you already were aware that there was a letter being generated, whether you had laid your eyes on it or not. And you could have said, hey, I've got wind that Rock the Future is generating a letter. I'm not 100% sure what's all in the letter. I'm going to follow up tomorrow, try to get a copy. But again, I had to find out through the media that there was a letter written. And this is not the first time this has happened, so this is why I'm extra frustrated about it, because there have been a few times where things have happened in this district where we've had to find out through the media, through Facebook, through other people before we even find out about it through our own leaders in the district.
Commissioner, Vice President Elliott.
So where do we go from here in terms of Rock the Future? When Rock the Future takes on that kind of posture, is this an organization that we want to work with? Is this an organization that we want to support? I mean, I think that we have to look at what's behind Rock the Future, who's behind Rock the Future, and is Jackie Campbell just the face of it? So what's going on behind it? And to really think and be courageous about it. If we don't want them to be a part of this district, we need to tell them. And whoever else is trying to do this. Now, I don't have a problem with people helping us, but at the same time, we got to let go of this nonsense. That's the kind of stuff that's been keeping us where we are. We're at a position now where we're moving in the right direction around graduation rates. We're moving in the right way about this, the district coming together in terms of administration. I think we're moving in the right direction. Listen, I think I read the paper, but as far as I'm concerned, I dismiss them. They're not here doing this work. They can't see it. So as far as for me, I dismiss Rock, like they told the lie about they're the ones that helped to reduce the suspension rates. We've been working, since I've been here, I've been working on that. This board has done that. So I don't want to get into all of this, the ancillary stuff. It doesn't mean anything for the work that we've got to do. Let's keep it moving. Stay out of the way if you don't want to do this work, and get on board in order to help us, as opposed to being critical of this whole process. We can't afford that anymore. So whatever the decision of the Commissioner of State Education, listen, we're going to have to follow that and keep it moving. But I don't want to waste time. For them, the organization just came into existence a few years ago. They don't mean anything to me, and I'll put that on the record.
So I don't hear a lot of support for a letter, unless I've missed something. I know we've talked about a lot of different stuff, but getting focused on whether we want to do a letter, doesn't sound like there's a majority of folks that are interested in doing that. Commissioner Powell?
First, I want to thank Commissioner Elliott for bringing us back on task, and I second her attitude about Rock the Future, about whether they're helping or getting in the way. Perhaps a letter to the commissioner isn't necessary. although maybe a phone call just reminding her we're still waiting for her response might be in order. But I'm still interested in writing some kind of an editorial in response to Rock the Future, articulating what I said earlier about it being premature and assuming failure. You know, the Democrat and Chronicle, nobody reads it anymore, so that's not really the audience that I'm interested in. It's just, I think we should have a response, a generic response that's an editorial essay in nature as an alternative to something for Commissioner Ilya. Let me put that out there as an alternative.
I actually think that's a good idea. The challenge would be drafting something that board members would want to sign off at. And since I was so willing to ask Commissioner Davis to work on the comprehensive opening, I will volunteer to draft something as terms of an editorial. Where it gets sent, we can decide that later on. I just think that it might be difficult to get everybody to sign off on it, but let's see what happens.
Well,
let me just say, because I'm willing to send it on my own, as an individual.
Sure, and I'd probably be happy to sign on with you. The reason I think you might get more support is that if we focus on the fact that the Rock the Future's posture is premature, bypasses the issues of the exact language of our response, and maybe we can get unanimity. I think once we have a letter drafted, perhaps we could send it across the bow and see if we do have unanimous support, we can send it as the board. Otherwise, just board members that are willing to sign on to the letter could allow our name to be used as well.
All right.
Can I share one thing? Oh.
Yes, Commissioner Davis.
When was that email sent by Simone? Because I don't see it here in
Simone? You mean Jackie?
Friday. It was that Friday.
On Friday?
Yeah.
There were about 5 attachments.
Yeah, 5 attachments,
buried.
and it's RTF letter, which is Rock the Future letter, as a docs, DOCX.
Easy to miss.
Any other comments on, oh, yes, Commissioner Shepherd?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I actually, based off of what I heard here today, that I'm inclined to agree with Vice President Elliott that, I don't want to use the strong words that she used, but she did say to dismiss Rock the Future. But what I would say is that I wouldn't even respond back to them at all, because it sounds like if in the February 8th meeting everything was kosher and then all of a sudden this letter comes out, it sounds as if an organization that talks about collaborating with us is working to undermine us. I don't see how that can be helpful and useful for us to move forward with them in any capacity at this point, just based off of what we just had today. So I agree with Vice President Elliott that, we should just move in a different direction. I'm trying to use nice words because I'm actually very upset right now, but move in a different direction.
Let me just ask
Yep, Vice
this
President,
question.
sure.
Do we need to make a formal resolution to not work with Rock the Future? And I'll just leave that to you, Mr. Superintendent. I'm not looking to do a formal resolution per se, but, we don't have the time to be collaborative and work together. So I just don't want to hear all this other stuff. I want to hear about how we're going to get these babies across the finish line, ready to work in a market where they can compete. So all this other stuff, I'm not dealing with.
Well, what I'll do is I'll draft something, and if there can't be any consensus about it, then, as everybody here can do, you can author something as an individual. I hope to have something drafted by the middle of this week. To tell you the truth, I don't think I'm going to even be talking about Rock the Future, because the reality is we do need as many people working on this issue of community dysfunction. But I'm agreeing with you, Vice President Elliott. I don't need to spend my time thinking about them. I need to spend my time thinking about and working on the children. So in the thing that I'm going to draft, it's going to talk about what we have done, what we know we must do to get better, and in doing that, it's going to emphasize the importance of collaborative relationships. And it's not going to focus on Rock the Future or anybody else for that matter. And by the way, one of the things I'm thinking about is we do have the evidence that we are collaborative. That this whole reduction in out-of-school suspensions occurred because we reached out. You were here, and many folks that are on here weren't here at the time, reached out to the community to help us look at our code of conduct in a different way. So, and as you said,
Attendance
blitz, we've worked with a lot of different organizations. So that's what I'm thinking. Let me draft it. I'll send it to everybody, and we'll see what happens from there, all right?
I just want to say one thing. Thank you, Shanae, for sending the email. I wasn't on it, so if I could be added to I don't see my name listed in the list. If I could be added to the distribution list going forward.
And Commissioner Davis made the point earlier on today in an email that I did see. Make sure you use her RCSD email address, because apparently people were using your...
Yes, I just was using the other address till I actually took office, so if we could use the district address at all times, that'd be
All right, so in terms of the letter, no letter, I just want clarity, no letter, but I'll draft a letter to the editor and we'll see where that goes. All right, next item on the agenda is Resolution 684, which was tabled from February 28th. Willow, you want to...
Yeah,
We have to have a motion to lift it from the table, I think, right?
that's correct.
All right, you're making that motion?
Motion to lift it.
Yep, and it's seconded by Vice President Elliott. Yep, go ahead.
That's,
Any discussion about it?
don't we have a separate vote? There's a motion to lift.
Well.
And then another vote to actually
Well, I was thinking it's been lifted, it's back here, now we can discuss it,
discuss. Okay.
right?
In the terms of discussion, careful read, I see that the additional funding of $5,500 would be funded by a grant. So on that basis alone, I support such a resolution. However, I do have real concerns about RCSD being the conduit for jobs. I think that if the city is eligible for these grants, the city is better suited to be a jobs conduit for young people than ourselves. And in terms of our budget planning, I'd prefer not to see this in our budget. I think it serves to inflate our budget, and it takes us off of our core mission.
If I could just respond to your comments, Commissioner Powell, just in terms of some historical perspective, we were talking, this is when, what's the finance director? Bill Ansbro was here, that we were talking about jobs for our young people and giving them opportunities, because many of them were not having the opportunities within our community in terms of getting jobs. Now, I don't know if this is the same thing, but I'm just sort of giving you some background that Bill Ansbro helped us with some of the summer opportunities that were around here to employ, and that board at that time thought it was a good thing.
I agree that some of the jobs funding did start with Bill Ansbro. Your recollection of history is correct. Even going back that far, I have been concerned that it's mission creep. If this is grounded in grant dollars, I would like to see the city apply for those grants. I remember as a youngster myself, was eligible for a federal jobs opportunity because of our household income. It was a federal program. It was not run through the schools, and I just think that it's mission creep. Again, that's all editorial. I am supporting this resolution. Thank you.
Can I just add for some clarity around AmeriCorps? So it was started in 1993 with the mission that people can work where they live and serve their community at the same time. So the city of Rochester actually has several AmeriCorps programs, both within City Hall and at different organizations, also at the public library. So they already have AmeriCorps positions. And so there's AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps Vista. Both of them have different requirements. Vista, you have to have, I believe, a master's degree in order to apply to be at Vista versus regular AmeriCorps, where you can just have a minimum of a associate's degree, and in some cases a bachelor's, depending on the program and the scope of work you're going to be doing. Historically, in this district, AmeriCorps has been around minimally. I joined AmeriCorps in 2004. And AmeriCorps was here. I was the leader. I would go do site visits. I would go to non-for-profits, and we did have some schools at that time. A few years after that, the government changed a little bit around the budget for AmeriCorps, and it was decided that AmeriCorps would, in this community, the majority of programs would work primarily in the Rochester City School District and school districts with an education focus. So the fact that I feel like we had this discussion last year as well around AmeriCorps, it came up, someone flagged the resolution. But if you guys are not remembering these conversations around organizations that we have historical partnerships with, and you're bringing them back up, that's primarily it's a problem for me. It's like it's been around for a very long time, so to flag it now, it doesn't make sense, even with the fact that it is being grant funded. So that for me is even better, that it's grant funded and we're not paying for it out of our general funds. But it is a valuable program, and I want to throw that on the record. And I'm not just saying it because I went through it, but I have a lived experience with it. Now, the students, the adults that go through this, they get that scholarship to either pay off up to a little bit over $5,000 for either a student loan or to further their education. They have a choice on what to do with that educational grant and stipend that they get. Just want to throw that out there.
Let me just respond to Commissioner LeBron here for a second. Yes. Commissioner LeBron, how old are you? Young.
I am.
So sometimes some of us who've been around, we don't remember everything. Okay. So we apologize if it's a problem for you, but we just don't remember everything. And so, once we vote on these resolutions, they go to the district and we don't remember. So just be patient with some of us who are a little older than you. Thank you.
I'll take that.
Thank you.
Dan.
Yes, Commissioner Hallmark?
So I was the one who called this from the last business meeting, and my concern or questions really had nothing to do with AmeriCorps Vista. It was really questions about wanting more information about the programming, arts integration, and attendance, and I still have that question.
So I can tell you where they're assigned. Currently, they are one is in the arts department, one is in the attendance department, and one is at Oasis. And they do assignments for each one of those departments, supporting the arts, obviously for the arts department. But also, so the arts department is doing that within the schools. Oasis helps support with all the programs they have there, including their attendance and their enrollment. And then the other one is supporting with the attendance department and the initiatives there, including the attendance list and some of that organization.
Just curious, is there any relationship between those three aspects of the programming, arts integration, attendance, and the Oasis?
I would say probably enrollment around the Oasis and the attendance, but not necessarily with the arts department for clarity.
And do you have any information about the arts integration? It doesn't have to be here, but I would just be
I
curious.
will provide that with you, and I'll work with Dom around that, because the person works directly with Dom around all the arts initiatives.
Okay, because that's my personal interest is arts integration, and I haven't really read anything about details about arts integration. So.
Okay, I will give you that detail.
Thank
I'll
you.
put it in the board letter.
And can I ask one more question? If you don't mind. I had the same questions as Commissioner Hallmark, and I was wondering, did we receive a report for the first AmeriCorps contract that we did? The one is a part of the resolution, a part of the background of it. Did we receive a report on the attendance initiative, some of the positives that have come out because of our participation in this? Have we received a list of the community-identified barriers to attendance and suggestions of resources to help families overcome those barriers. Did that occur?
So at the culmination of the program, we can give you an assessment of the impact, but we can also give you a list of activities like we did for the arts integration, if you'd like that directly from the attendance department. But for the impacts, we would do that at the end of the program.
At the end of the year.
Specifically.
Which would be in the summertime?
Yes.
Okay.
So can I just also clarify for Commissioner Davis too, and a little bit for Commissioner Hallmark. So AmeriCorps Vista, so this is obviously a very specific, but throughout the school year, AmeriCorps Vista members are serving in different capacities and in different roles throughout different schools. So a lot of them are doing extended learning. Some of them are there throughout the whole day. They all have to complete 40 hours of what's called service hours each week. Mm-hmm. So it's not a traditional hour pay by pay. It's a stipend that they get every other week. Okay. So it's kind of like a paycheck, but on our end, we're not issuing the paycheck. It comes through AmeriCorps. And I can explain more or send you a link for more information about AmeriCorps programs nationally at the state level in Rochester so that you have a little bit more understanding. But I just want to throw that out there because we have lots of AmeriCorps members throughout the school year right now that are in different schools in different capacities. And a lot of times they're just an additional adult supporting different initiatives and programs that we have in the district.
Yeah, I did go online today, and I saw where they're assigned to the attendance and et cetera. I just wanted to know if we actually had a report of the impact.
But we'll put more information in the board letter from the superintendent to bring more information to light.
And this is to the board. Even though it's through a grant, we're still held accountable as the board for how the funds are spent, et cetera. It's not going to be a part of our budget, though.
It is, any money we get
So the grant is going to go through our budget.
It's going to have a revenue and an expense side. So it's not like we're taking money out of our operating aid. It's new revenue, but it's also new expense.
And we receive the grant specifically for this.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, that's, for those of us who've also been around for a while, we're very familiar with the AmeriCorps program. I know a lot of folks in here. This is nothing new, and I think this is probably familiar to a lot of people, Commissioner LeBron. I know I've been associated with AmeriCorps for many years, and I know a lot of folks in this room have. So if folks do need to know more about AmeriCorps, obviously the administration can provide that information to you. All right, so now we have to vote on Resolution 684. All those any further questions or comments regarding 684? All right, there being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of Resolution 684 say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? I think we've got a unanimous vote.
I didn't capture the motion to consider it. I don't know if you guys said it, and I was.
Oh, we did not.
Well,
kinda
it
rolled
was
in.
tabled.
I
And
had
again, you correct me if I'm
the
wrong.
motion to lift. I don't have the
It
motion.
was tabled, and then it was put back on, which.
But we did not do that.
Well, let me ask Carl, if I'm mistaken. I thought when it's tabled, because it was discussed, it was brought up for discussion before, and then it was tabled. And my thought was that when it gets, there's a motion to take it back from the table, put it back on the table, that it's in the posture that it was in before, which was discussion, and then you can vote. Or no, do you have to?
Is it two separate motions?
Is it two separate motions? I thought when it was tabled when it was active.
It's actually at the pleasure of the board, but given Robert's rules for small bodies, you would certainly be in the position to be able to vote in as much as it was moved and seconded prior to its having been tabled.
Okay.
So we've got a unanimous vote, and that means we have just some stuff on executive session that's left. I got a note from somebody.
Me.
Liz. This would be under new business, Liz. Commissioner Hallmark?
Yeah, I just, in the spirit of reporting back when you attend things, I did bring some flyers back from the Big Five and wanted to just pass them out for those who weren't there with us, Commissioner Shepard and Commissioner Powell and I, and Superintendent Logar.
The Big Five?
Yes, they did.
I haven't been there in a while.
Okay. Did
Okay,
you want
that's it.
anything further? Okay.
No, just, this is a really nice sort of summary of the main points about the Big Five. Actually, there's 7 at this point, and there's a little blurb for each of the 7, and it gives nice facts that you can have as a handy reference. So I thought it was really nice. I want everybody to have a copy.
But this is the Big Six now, isn't it, with
Well,
Utica?
Utica and Mount Vernon as well, but they're associate members. And perhaps you don't know this, but Georgia Ashudo, who is our longtime executive director, has taken a staff position with the Senate Education Committee. So she's working for the new Senator Shelley Mayer, who is the new Senate Education Chair, and Jennifer Pyle, who was one of the executive assistants, is now the she's been made the permanent executive director, but now there are only 2 folks in the office, and I would think that they'll have to put out a search for a new member of the team, because I don't think they can do it with just 2 people.
A couple of things before I get a motion to go into executive session. There is, we're trying to schedule these pre-circle conversations. I believe that Dr. May, I think her name is, has scheduled most of them or has spoken to most board members. If you have not spoken to, I think her name is Dr. Shira May, is that right? If you haven't spoken to her or gotten back in touch with her, please do so, because she wants to have these pre-circle conversations. I know it's good to hear that Dr. Kino is going to be participating. For those of you who don't know, we've decided to practice what we preach, and we're going to do our own restorative circle for the Board of Education. So that's good news. And so what they do is they have these pre-circle conversations with people to find out where they're at. So if you haven't set up your pre-circle conversation, please do that. If you haven't filled in the DE response worksheet that was prepared by Commissioner Hallmark to try to get people to take some assignment and some responsibility for different aspects of our response to DE's report, I'd ask that you do that as soon as possible. We all have to own that document, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. As I said, she doesn't care who voted for, who didn't vote for it. Well, I understand Commissioner Shepard says she cares, but the commissioner doesn't care. Finally, officers, I want to tell you all, until we get back rolling with the President's report, we did have an officers meeting this morning. That actually is something that was required as part of the DE report, and it was a good meeting, and I'm glad that Dan and Linda were there. It's a good conversation. You all know Dan and Linda's demeanor. They want to get stuff done. One of the things that we talked about is that that the Board of Education needs to have a clear understanding of what our successes are and our challenges. And once we get a clear understanding of them, then we can communicate that to the community. So one of the things that we talked about is reducing the leadership meetings that happen in our schools to maybe about 2 a month. And that's where we have that one-on-one contact with principals and chiefs, but get the full report from schools in our business meetings. So in other words, the typical leadership finish line report structure agenda that we have for our leadership meetings, we now are going to bring them to the full board. And with the idea that Dan and Linda and Vice President Elliott had, which was to, yes, talk about individual schools, but also identify things in those schools which are best practices. Because we need to, when other people won't, we learned that this week, hold up our successes, we need to be able to do that. So to move at least 2 of those leadership finish line report meetings to the full board and to the full community, we'll be able to communicate what positive things are happening. Carlos, this is something that I'm sure you're going to be very interested in. So for example, one of the first meetings, finish line meetings that we're going to have with the full board will be discussing number 9 school. Celebrating their success, but having a presentation by Sharon and whoever Dan thinks is appropriate, talking about how it was they went from a receivership school to a school in good standing. So it'll still be a finish line report type of discussion, but it'll be highlighting the positive things, because we all agreed we have to do more of that, and the perfect form and setting is our board meetings, okay? Now I need a motion to, I'm sorry, Commissioner Powell.
Yes. Along the lines of some of the things we promised to do, We did not evaluate last Thursday's meeting, in part because our board clerk wasn't back yet, but we do need to, I think, get into the habit of.
There was, I did request some feedback from the board members on the survey. There was some concern that members of the board did not like the questions that were being surveyed. So I'm still looking for feedback from you all to tell me what exactly you would like to have surveyed. So we suspended the use of the survey in mid-January for that.
Oh, I thought it was because you weren't here, but I think even if we're weren't comfortable with the first survey, we do need to keep surveying till we find out what the right questions to ask are. At minimum, it's, you know, whether our meetings achieve the goals that they set out to achieve based on the agenda, and whether we are moving towards achievement of the board's priorities or the board's identified goals for the year.
Yeah, in that regard, I would say to you, Dr. Lee, just continue to do the surveys. If it's not perfect, yeah, absolutely. If it's not perfect, we can tweak it, because if we wait for everybody who's very busy here doing their thing, we wait for people to provide changes, we'll never do it. So it may not be a perfect survey, but just keep on generating. Because I think, for example, at our last meeting, I heard a number of people say to me, they thought it was a good meeting. They thought that we really worked well as a board. This meeting, while we had some derailment of the focus on kids, we had an important conversation about leadership, and that's important. So I think we should constantly evaluate. But again, I would say, I would just offer, while we were a little bit distracted and an important subject, I think this was a good meeting. I do. Certainly better than by comparison to some that we've had in the past. But yeah, go ahead and pass out those surveys. All right? Any other questions or comments before we get a motion to go into executive session? Now, we have to go into executive session. It does say to discuss matters related to collective bargaining and negotiations. That conversation will be very brief, I think. But we also have to discuss matters related to a particular person or persons. Can I get that motion?
So moved.
And moved by Vice President Elliott, seconded by Commissioner Hallmark. All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, good night, everybody.